The transport from the core worlds to the umbral systems took 3 weeks, which gave Marcus plenty of time to second-guess every decision that had led him to accept this assignment. He spent the journey reviewing what little information existed about the Nightborn, most of it rumor, speculation, and the kind of folklore that accumulated around species nobody actually understood. They lived in systems with dying red stars. They avoided bright light. They were possibly immortal, definitely dangerous, and ruled by a queen so terrifying that the last diplomatic envoy had requested hazard pay just to attend a virtual meeting. Marcus had built his career studying species other xenobiologists considered too alien, too dangerous, or too weird to bother with. He'd cataloged the life cycle of silicon-based organisms that reproduced by shattering. He'd documented the social structures of hive minds that communicated through controlled electrical discharges. He'd spent 6 months living with a species that experienced time non-linearly and found the concept of sequential events deeply offensive. Compared to that, how bad could the Nightborn be? The answer, he suspected as his transport docked at Nightfall Station, was probably very bad. The station itself was beautiful in a deeply unsettling way, all dark metal and bioluminescent lighting that cast everything in shades of purple and red that made his eyes ache. The few other passengers disembarked quickly, traders and freight haulers who clearly wanted to conduct their business and leave as fast as possible. Marcus was the only one who seemed to be staying. His escort was waiting at the airlock, a tall figure completely concealed by dark robes, face hidden by a hood that seemed to drink light. Dr. Marcus Reeve. The voice was soft, almost a whisper, but carried perfectly in the station's strange acoustics. I am to bring you to the Queen immediately. Immediately. Marcus adjusted his bag, which contained approximately 17 different types of scanning equipment, and one very optimistic bottle of human whiskey. I was hoping to get settled first, maybe review some preliminary data. The Queen does not wait, the figure said, already gliding down the corridor with movements that were too smooth to be entirely natural. Marcus followed, trying not to look like he was hurrying to keep up, which he absolutely was. The corridors twisted in ways that seemed architecturally impossible, curving back on themselves, lit by those bioluminescent fixtures that pulsed with something that might have been a heartbeat if heartbeats glowed, and made you slightly nauseous to look at directly. They passed other Nightborn, all robed and hooded, all moving with that same fluid grace. Marcus caught glimpses of pale hands with too many joints, flashes of what might have been glowing veins beneath skin, sounds that his translator rendered as possibly language, and definitely concerning. His scientific brain was cataloging everything: adaptive evolution for low-light environments, likely enhanced proprioception explaining the movement patterns, bioluminescence serving communication or thermoregulation functions. His survival instincts were screaming that he was very small, very alone, and very far from anyone who could help if this went badly. The throne room was massive, lit by what looked like captive stars floating in crystalline containers. The light they cast was deep red, making everything look like it existed in a perpetual sunset. At the far end of the room, on a throne of black stone that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light, sat a figure completely shrouded in robes. Around her, Marcus assumed her based on the title, though he was ready to be corrected, stood what he guessed was the nocturnal court. Dozens of robed figures arranged in precise formations that probably meant something important politically. Dr. Marcus Reeve. The voice came from the throned figure, and it was extraordinary, melodic and commanding simultaneously, like someone had figured out how to make silk sound authoritative. You have traveled far to reach us. We are told you study what others consider monstrous. Marcus tried to remember his diplomatic training, which had been approximately 3 days long and mostly consisted of don't accidentally start wars and, if possible, avoid dying. Your Majesty, I study life in all its diversity. I've found that what one species considers monstrous is usually just unfamiliar biology interpreted through cultural fear. Pretty words. The queen stood, and even completely concealed she moved with predatory grace. But words are performance, reactions are truth. She descended from her throne, each step deliberate. Tell me, Doctor Reeve, what do you know of the Nightborn? Honestly, very little, Your Majesty. Marcus decided honesty was probably safer than pretending expertise he didn't have. You're long-lived, photosensitive, rumored to be hematophagus, though I suspect that's more cultural practice than biological necessity. Your society is isolationist, your technology is advanced, and most species are terrified of you for reasons that are probably more psychological than rational. A sound rippled through the court. Might have been laughter, might have been offense. His translator was equally confused. The queen stopped a few feet away, close enough that Marcus could feel something emanating from her. Not heat exactly, but presence, power, the sense of something vast and ancient contained in a humanoid form. You think the fear is irrational, she said. I think most fear is irrational once you understand what you're actually afraid of, Marcus replied. But I'm also a xenobiologist, not a psychologist, so I could be completely wrong. Do you know why we wear these robes, Dr. Reeve? Why we hide our faces from outsiders? Cultural tradition, religious significance, practical protection from light exposure, Marcus guessed. Self-preservation, the queen said. Protection from the reactions we inspire when others see what we truly are. Do you know what happens when we reveal ourselves to outsiders, Dr. Reeve? They flee. They recoil in horror. They see nightmares made flesh, predators, monsters from their darkest evolutionary fears. Even the bravest diplomats struggle to hide their terror. Your Majesty, I've seen a lot of different life forms, Marcus said carefully. I've learned that terror is usually a failure of imagination. We fear what we don't understand, and we don't try to understand what we fear. It's circular and stupid and very, very human, but it's not inevitable. The queen was silent for a long moment, and Marcus couldn't read anything from her shrouded form. Then she spoke, and her voice was different, not commanding but almost curious. I summoned you here for a specific purpose, Dr. Reeve. I want to know if your academic theories about fear and beauty hold when confronted with reality. I want to know if you're genuinely different from every other outsider who has stood where you stand, or if you're simply better at hiding your prejudices. I don't understand, Your Majesty. You will. She reached up slowly, deliberately, and grasped the edge of her hood. I am going to show you what 300 years of diplomats have recoiled from. What has made grown warriors flee in terror? What has earned me the title of Vampire Queen, nightmare of the umbral systems, the monster that parents invoke to frighten children across a dozen star systems? She paused. And you are going to give me your honest reaction, not diplomatic platitudes, not careful political phrasing, truth. Can you do that, Dr. Reeve? Marcus's heart was hammering, but his scientific curiosity was stronger than his fear. Yes, Your Majesty, I can do that. Then witness, the queen said, and pulled back her hood. The face revealed was like nothing Marcus had ever seen, and he'd seen bioluminescent jellyfish that sang, crystalline life forms that thought in mathematics, and once a species that was technically a colonial organism pretending to be a person. But this was something else entirely. Her skin was pale, almost luminescent, with visible veins that glowed from within, pulsing with light that shifted through colors, currently a deep purple that reminded him of twilight. Her eyes were completely black, no whites, no visible iris, just polished obsidian that reflected the red light like dark mirrors. Her features were sharp and elegant, high cheekbones, strong jawline, definitely humanoid, but with subtle differences that marked her as fundamentally other. Her hair was long and black with streaks of deep red that seemed to move independently, absorbing light at the edges like it was made of living shadow. And there were the fangs, delicate but unmistakable, visible even when her mouth was closed, predatory and precise. The bony structures along her cheekbones and temples weren't deformities but elegant reinforcements, giving her face an angular beauty that was enhanced rather than diminished by their presence. She was waiting for his reaction, her posture tense, her glowing veins pulsing faster. Anxiety, Marcus's brain cataloged automatically, stress response visible in real time. The entire court was watching in absolute silence. This was a test, clearly, and Marcus was supposed to fail it. Supposed to flinch, recoil, show fear. Prove that he was like every other outsider who couldn't see past their own evolutionary prejudices. Instead, Marcus took a step closer, his scientific fascination overwhelming every other instinct. "Your Majesty," he said slowly, "may I speak freely?" "Please," she said, and her voice was tight, controlled, like she was bracing for impact. "You're beautiful," Marcus said simply. The silence that followed was so complete Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. The Queen stared at him, her black eyes wide, her bioluminescent veins flaring bright enough to light the entire throne room. Around them, the nocturnal court seemed frozen, dozens of hooded figures absolutely motionless in shock. "What did you say?" The Queen finally managed, and her voice was barely a whisper. "You're beautiful," Marcus repeated, warming to his thesis now, his scientific enthusiasm taking over. "Objectively, aesthetically beautiful. The bioluminescent vascular system is extraordinary. It must serve multiple functions, thermoregulation certainly, probably communication, possibly even a defense mechanism. Your eyes suggest you see in spectrums I can't even perceive. The cranial reinforcements indicate enhanced sensory processing or structural support for neural density beyond human norms. And yes, the predatory adaptations are obvious, but predation is ecology, not morality. You've evolved for a specific environmental niche, and you've done it elegantly." He was gesturing now, unable to help himself. "Your species clearly adapted for low-light environments with specific survival pressures that favored enhanced speed, strength, and sensory processing. The photosensitivity explains the isolationism, the red spectrum lighting, everything. But instead of becoming purely nocturnal ambush predators, you maintained high intelligence, complex social structures, advanced civilization. That's remarkable. That's one of the most successful evolutionary adaptations I've ever documented." The Queen continued to stare at him like he'd grown a second head. "You think I'm beautiful," she said slowly, testing the words. "You're not frightened, you're not horrified, are you analyzing me?" "Sorry," Marcus said, not sorry at all. "Professional hazard. But yes, Your Majesty, you're beautiful. Anyone who says otherwise is letting cultural fear override their aesthetic perception." Her veins flashed through a rapid cascade of colors, purple, blue, gold, back to purple. This isn't," she seemed genuinely at a loss for words. "No one has ever called me beautiful. Monster, yes. Nightmare, certainly. Terrifying, powerful, ancient, all of those, but beautiful." "Then they weren't looking properly," Marcus said. "Or they were too busy being afraid to actually see what was in front of them." The Queen's veins were now a bright gold that lit up her entire face, making her skin seem to glow from within. "You're serious. You genuinely mean this?" "Your Majesty, I'm a terrible liar. I got kicked out of diplomatic training twice for being too honest. If I thought you were frightening, I'd be backing away slowly and making my peace with whatever deity seemed most relevant. Instead, I'm standing here thinking about 20 different research questions and wondering if you'd let me run some non-invasive scans because your biology is fascinating." One of the court members made a sound that might have been a choked laugh. The Queen's expression did something complex, shock, confusion, and something that might have been hope all flickering across her striking features. "Dr. Reeve," she said carefully, "I have ruled for 300 years. In that time I have met with countless diplomats, traders, ambassadors. Every single one of them has looked upon my face and recoiled. Hidden it better or worse depending on their diplomatic training, but the fear was always there. Always." Her veins pulsed brighter, And you stand here and call me beautiful like it's obvious. Like I'm not the nightmare that haunts a dozen cultures' folklore. You're not a nightmare, Marcus said firmly. You're a person who happens to belong to a species with different evolutionary adaptations than mine. That doesn't make you monstrous. It makes you interesting. The Queen moved closer, and Marcus could see the details he'd missed before. The way her veins branched in patterns that were mathematically precise, the subtle variations in her skin tone that probably conveyed meaning, the way her eyes reflected light in ways that suggested layered structures far more complex than human eyes. "You're very strange, Marcus Reeve," she said, using his first name for the first time. "I get that a lot," Marcus admitted. "Usually right before someone tries to convince me that studying silicon-based life forms is a waste of time, and I should focus on something normal like tax policy." Her lips twitched, might have been a smile, hard to tell with the fangs. "What am I to make of you? The human who looks at the vampire queen and sees beauty instead of horror." "Maybe that I'm exactly the xenobiologist you need," Marcus suggested. "Someone who can look past the cultural baggage and see your people as they actually are. Someone who can help the galaxy understand that the Nightborn aren't nightmares. You're just different. And different isn't bad." The Queen's veins settled into a soft gold color that seemed almost peaceful. "You've disrupted my entire plan, Dr. Reeve. I was going to reveal myself, watch you flee in terror, and use your reaction as proof to my court that opening relations with outsiders was futile. That we must remain isolated, hidden, feared but safe." "Sorry for ruining your demonstration," Marcus offered. She laughed, and the sound was like crystal wind chimes, beautiful and slightly unsettling in ways that made his brain happy. "Don't apologize. You've given me something far more valuable than validation of my cynicism." "What's that?" "Hope," she said quietly. "The possibility that maybe, after 3 centuries of isolation, someone can finally see past the monster to the person underneath." Her veins flashed bright gold. "Stay, Dr. Reeve, study my people, learn our culture, and teach us that perhaps we don't have to hide forever." Marcus grinned. "Your Majesty, I'd be honored. Though I should warn you, I ask a lot of questions, and I have absolutely no sense of appropriate personal boundaries when I'm interested in something." "Good," the Queen said, and her smile was genuine now, fangs and all, striking and warm and absolutely beautiful. "Neither do I." Marcus was given quarters that the Nightborn apparently considered comfortable, but which he found deeply confusing. The furniture seemed to operate on principles that violated at least 3 laws of physics he was reasonably sure were universal. The bed had tried to eat him twice before he figured out it was biosensing technology, designed to adapt to the occupant's physiology, and had gotten very confused by human biochemistry. The lighting controls required understanding a color-based interface that assumed you could see in spectrums Marcus definitely couldn't. After an hour of struggle, there was a soft knock at his door. He opened it to find a Nightborn woman with her hood lowered, revealing features similar to the Queen's but younger, less marked by time. Her veins glowed with curious yellow. He was starting to pick up the color language, though he suspected he was missing 90% of the nuance. "Dr. Reeve, I am Lady Nyxara, second of the Nocturnal Court. I've been sent to help you with your quarters and to ask you several pointed questions about your intentions." "My intentions are to not get eaten by furniture," Marcus said. "Beyond that, I'm flexible." Nyxara's veins flashed with gold, amusement, he was learning. "The adaptive furnishings are designed for Nightborn physiology. They're confused by your biochemistry. Here." She moved to a panel he hadn't noticed and pressed several controls in sequence. The furniture immediately stopped looking predatory and started looking like actual furniture. "Manual override. Use these settings for human-compatible configurations." "You're a lifesaver," Marcus said gratefully. "Literally, that bed was making threatening noises. It was trying to optimize your sleeping posture based on skeletal structure. It just didn't have human skeletal structures in its database." She sat with careful formality. Now, my questions. What you said to the Queen, was it genuine? Or is this an elaborate diplomatic strategy we don't understand? Completely genuine, Marcus assured her. I have the diplomatic skills of a particularly enthusiastic rock. Everything I said about the Queen being beautiful, I meant it. She's extraordinary from every angle, biological, aesthetic, cultural. I don't understand why that's controversial. Nyxara's veins flickered through complex patterns. Because for 300 years, every outsider who has seen the Queen's face has recoiled in fear, hidden it with varying success, but the fear was always evident. Always. She leaned forward. You truly don't find her frightening. The predatory features, the fangs, the eyes that many species find deeply unsettling. Why would I? Marcus asked. She's adapted for a specific ecological niche. The predatory features indicate hunting strategies, which suggest your species' evolutionary history included periods of resource scarcity that favored efficient predation. The photosensitivity and enhanced low-light vision suggest you evolved on worlds with dim suns, which tracks with your current habitat. The bioluminescent communication system is brilliant from an efficiency standpoint. And aesthetically, he shrugged. Beauty is subjective, but by my standards, your Queen is stunning. Your standards appear to be very different from most species, Nyxara observed. My standards are based on appreciating adaptive success and biological elegance, Marcus corrected. Most species let evolutionary fear responses override their perception. Humans are particularly bad about this. We see fangs and dark eyes, and our hindbrain screams predator, danger, run. But I've spent years training myself to ignore that initial reaction and actually look at what's in front of me. Nyxara's veins shifted to deep purple concern, he thought. Dr. Reeve, I need you to understand something. The Queen has ruled in isolation for 3 centuries. She has been called monster, nightmare, demon. She has been feared by every species that knows of our existence. And she has learned to accept that fear as inevitable, permanent, the price of being what she is. That sounds incredibly lonely, Marcus said quietly. It is, Nyxara agreed. More than you can imagine. And now you've given her hope. Hope that maybe she's not the monster everyone claimed. Hope that someone can see her as beautiful, as worthy of admiration rather than fear. That hope is dangerous, Dr. Reeve. Dangerous how? Because if you're lying, if this is strategy or performance, it will destroy something in her that has survived 3 centuries of isolation. And if you're being honest, if you genuinely see her as you claim, then you're offering her something she's denied herself for longer than your species has had spaceflight. Connection with someone who sees her truly. Marcus absorbed that, understanding the weight of what Nyxara was saying. I'm not lying. I'm not that clever. I genuinely think your Queen is beautiful, and I genuinely want to help your people understand that hiding forever isn't necessary. But I hear what you're saying, that this matters more than I realized, and I need to be careful with it. Nyxara's veins brightened to warm gold. You're more perceptive than you pretend to be, Dr. Reeve. I pretend to be oblivious because it makes people underestimate me, Marcus admitted. But when it matters, I pay attention, and I'm gathering this matters. More than you know. Nyxara stood to leave, then paused. The Queen has requested your presence for dinner. Private, informal, just the 2 of you. It's unprecedented. She hasn't had private meals with outsiders in living memory. She wants to know if your reaction was genuine or performative. Be honest with her, Dr. Reeve. She's had 3 centuries of careful diplomatic lies. She needs truth, even if that truth is that you were mistaken, and find her terrifying after all. That won't happen, Marcus said confidently. Because I wasn't mistaken, and I don't find her terrifying. I find her fascinating and beautiful, and I have about 600 questions about nightborn biology that I'm trying very hard not to bombard her with immediately. Nyxara's veins flashed bright gold, genuine amusement. Oh, you're going to be interesting. Try not to break our Queen's heart, Dr. Reeve. The Nightborn are very protective of those we care about, and we have long memories. Noted, Marcus said. For what it's worth, I have no intention of hurting anyone. I just want to understand, to learn, and maybe help your people realize they don't have to hide forever. Then perhaps you're exactly what the Queen needs, Nyxara said. Even if you're also exactly what she doesn't need, contradictions can be valuable. After she left, Marcus spent an hour reviewing everything he knew about Nightborn culture, which was frustratingly little, and trying to prepare for a private dinner with an alien queen who apparently nobody had called beautiful in 300 years. His usual approach to xenobiology was methodical observation and careful questioning, but this felt different. This felt personal in ways that scientific research usually wasn't. He was dealing with a person, not just a fascinating biological specimen. A person who'd been isolated and feared for centuries, and was apparently taking a significant risk by inviting him to dinner. Don't mess this up, he told himself. Be honest, be respectful, be you, and maybe try not to lead with the 600 biology questions. Save those for at least the second course. The Queen's private dining room was smaller than Marcus expected, lit by those bioluminescent fixtures, but adjusted to a softer glow that was easier on human eyes. The table was set with what looked like crystal, probably was crystal. This was a species that had mastered asteroid mining millennia ago, and the food arranged on it looked potentially edible if he didn't think too hard about its origins. The Queen, Valeria, she'd introduced herself when he arrived, using her personal name in a gesture that Nyxara had indicated was significant, sat across from him with her hood down. Her bioluminescent— "You see me as a biology problem," Valeria said, but her tone wasn't offended, more curious. "I see you as a biological marvel," Marcus corrected, "but also as a person. Those aren't mutually exclusive. You're Valeria, 300-year-old queen of the Nightborn, brilliant political strategist based on what Nyxara told me, carrying burdens nobody else can see. And you also happen to have extraordinary adaptive biology and a face that's aesthetically striking by any objective standard. Both things are true." Her veins flashed gold briefly. No one has ever framed it quite like that. As if the biological marvel and the person are both parts of the same whole. "Aren't they?" Marcus asked. "You can't separate what you are from who you are. Your biology shapes your experience, and your experience shapes how you've chosen to use your biology. It's integrated." Valeria was quiet for a moment, her veins shifting through complex patterns. 300 years, she finally said. 300 years of ruling, of diplomatic meetings conducted through screens and intermediaries, because showing my face caused such distress. 300 years of being called monster, demon, the vampire queen who haunts children's nightmares. And you sit here and tell me I'm beautiful like it's obvious. "Because it is obvious," Marcus said gently, "to anyone actually looking instead of reacting. But no one looks," Valeria said, and her voice was tired. "They react, they fear, they flee. Do you know what that's like, Dr. Reeve, to be the living embodiment of terror? To know that your mere presence frightens others, that your face sends diplomats into panic, that children across a dozen star systems are taught to fear creatures like you." Her veins darkened to deep purple. To be so fundamentally isolated that you can't even share a meal with someone without them recoiling. Marcus set down his food and looked at her directly. "I can't imagine. I've been lonely, sure. Traveling between stars studying species that don't want to talk to you gets isolating. But that's different from being feared, from being cast as the monster in everyone's story." He leaned forward. "But Valeria, you're not the monster they claimed. You're just different, and different scares people until they take the time to understand it." "Do you understand it?" she asked. "Me, what I am?" "Not yet," Marcus admitted. "I know some of your biology, none of your culture, barely anything about your personal history. But I want to understand, if you'll let me." Her veins cascaded through colors, purple, blue, gold, back to purple, unable to settle on a single emotional state. Why do you care?" Because you're fascinating, Marcus said simply. Because your people are living in enforced isolation based on fear that might not be necessary. Because you're a person who's been carrying impossible weight alone for 3 centuries and maybe, just maybe, you don't have to anymore. Because, he stopped, realizing he was about to say something that might be too honest, then decided honesty had worked so far. Because I think you deserve to have someone in your corner who sees you clearly, and I'd like to be that person if you'll let me. Valeria stared at him, and her veins were now glowing so bright they lit the entire room in gold and blue light. You barely know me, we met hours ago, and you're offering what? Friendship, alliance, understanding, all of the above, Marcus suggested. I know it's fast, I know it breaks protocols. But I'm not good at pretending and I don't see the point in dancing around what's obvious. I like you. I find you interesting and brilliant and yes, beautiful. I want to stay here, learn about your people, help you understand that hiding isn't the only option. And I want to know you. Not just Queen Valeria of the Nightborn, but Valeria, the person who's carried this burden alone for so long. She was silent, and Marcus worried he'd pushed too far, been too honest, broken some cultural boundary he didn't understand. Then she spoke, and her voice was soft. No one has wanted to know me in 300 years. They want to negotiate with the Queen, to trade with the Nightborn, to avoid angering the Vampire Queen. But know me. See me as a person rather than a symbol or a threat. Her veins pulsed with that bright gold. You're either very brave or very foolish, Marcus Reeve. Probably both, Marcus admitted. I've been told I have a talent for making complicated decisions without adequate reflection. Valeria laughed, that crystal chime sound, and the tension in the room dissolved. I like you, she said. You're honest to the point of social disaster. You see things no one else sees, and you're either unaware of or completely ignoring the fact that befriending me will make your life significantly more complicated. I've had complicated before, Marcus said. This seems like the good kind of complicated. The good kind. The kind where the complications are worth it because the outcome matters. The kind where you know you're taking risks, but you do it anyway because walking away would mean missing something important. Her veins were pure gold now, bright enough that Marcus had to squint slightly. You're going to change everything, she said quietly. Everything I've carefully maintained, all the walls and boundaries and protective isolation. You're going to walk through it all just by being honest. Is that bad? Marcus asked. I don't know, Valeria admitted, but I think I want to find out. She stood and moved to the window overlooking the station's interior, her movements fluid and predatory and somehow graceful. Come here. I want to show you something. Marcus joined her at the window. She touched a control and the view shifted, magnifying the planet below. Nyxthera, our homeworld. Most species look at our system and see dying stars, evidence that we're clinging to failing suns. But that's not what we are. She gestured at the red star visible in the distance. Our stars aren't dying. They're living, conscious, or as close to conscious as stellar masses can be. They communicate through gravitational waves, form networks, exchange information. My people discovered them millennia ago and dedicated ourselves to protecting them. Marcus stared at the pulsing star, his scientific mind reeling. That's extraordinary. That's one of the most significant discoveries in known space. Why keep it secret? Because the moment other species learn about living stars, they'll want to study them, exploit them, harvest their energy without understanding or caring that they're destroying conscious beings. We've seen it happen before. Species strip mining worlds that turn out to be inhabited, corporations destroying ecosystems in the name of profit. So we hide. We maintain our reputation as monsters, as nightmares, because fear keeps others away, and keeping others away keeps the stars safe. You're not monsters, Marcus said softly. You're guardians. We're both, Valeria corrected. We became what we needed to become to protect what matters. But in the process, we became isolated, feared, unable to form connections because connection requires trust, and trust requires revealing ourselves. She turned to face him, and her veins were shifting through complex patterns, gold and purple and blue all flowing together. Until someone looked at me and saw beauty instead of nightmare, saw possibility instead of threat. Marcus moved closer, close enough to see the individual patterns in her glowing veins, the way her eyes reflected light in layers, the sharp, elegant lines of her face that were striking rather than frightening. I see both. The guardian and the person, the strength and the loneliness, all of it. All of it, she repeated wonderingly. 3 centuries and no one has ever wanted to see all of it. Then they missed the interesting parts, Marcus said. They stood at the window together, watching the living stars pulse in their ancient conversation, and something fundamental shifted between them. Connection that transcended species and culture, and all the reasons they shouldn't be standing this close. Stay, Valeria said quietly. Not just for the research. Stay because, she paused, vulnerable in a way queens probably weren't supposed to be. Stay because I don't want to be alone anymore. Even if it's only for the span of your human lifetime. Even if it's brief by my standards. Stay and help me remember what it's like to be seen. I'll stay as long as you'll have me, Marcus promised. Years, decades if I'm lucky. However long it takes to help you realize you were never the monster they claimed. You're just Valeria, and Valeria is extraordinary. Her veins blazed bright enough to light the entire room, and when she smiled, fangs and all, it was the most beautiful thing Marcus had ever seen. You're going to change everything, she said again. Good, Marcus replied. Some things need changing. Word spread through Nightfall Station that the human xenobiologist had not only survived seeing the Queen's face, but had actually called her beautiful and meant it. By the next morning, Marcus had been summoned to 17 different interviews with members of the Nocturnal Court, all of them apparently convinced he was either incredibly brave, incredibly stupid, or evidence of some elaborate plot they couldn't quite identify. He answered their questions with the same basic honesty he'd given the Queen. Yes, he thought she was beautiful. No, he wasn't frightened. Yes, he genuinely wanted to help the Nightborn understand they didn't have to hide forever. By the afternoon, he was exhausted and hiding in what passed for the station's botanical gardens. Massive biodomes filled with plants that glowed in the dim light, creating patterns that were probably visible in spectrums he couldn't fully perceive. He was examining something that looked like a flower crossed with a crystal when Valeria found him. She was wearing simpler robes today, hood down, her veins displaying calm blue-purple patterns that suggested she was more relaxed than yesterday. Hiding from my court, she asked, amusement in her voice. Recovering from your court, Marcus corrected. Do they always ask that many questions? Because I've been interrogated by customs officials who were less thorough. They're protective, Valeria said, sitting beside him on a bench that adjusted itself to accommodate 2 different physiologies. They've watched me rule alone for 3 centuries. They're suspicious of anyone who gets close, especially outsiders, especially ones who claim to see beauty where others see nightmare. Understandable, Marcus acknowledged. Though I wish they'd believe I'm being honest instead of assuming I have some elaborate hidden agenda. I barely have a visible agenda, let alone a hidden one. Valeria's veins flashed gold, amusement. You really are terrible at subterfuge, aren't you? Catastrophically bad, Marcus agreed cheerfully. It's why I became a scientist instead of a spy. I can barely lie about what I had for breakfast, let alone conduct elaborate diplomatic deceptions. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, surrounded by glowing alien plants that created moving patterns of light across their skin. Finally, Marcus asked, "Can I ask you something personal? You can tell me it's none of my business." "Ask," Valeria said. "In 300 years, has no one from your own people told you you're beautiful? Has it all been outsiders who recoiled?" Her veins darkened to deep purple pain he was learning to read. The Nightborn don't conceptualize beauty the way other species do. We appreciate efficiency, strength, survival traits. Individual aesthetics are less emphasized. And I'm their queen. They see me as a symbol, not as a person with a face that could be beautiful or plain. I'm power, authority, the living embodiment of our species, not someone who might want to be seen as just me. That's incredibly lonely, Marcus observed quietly. It is, Valeria admitted. To be revered as untouchable by your own people, feared as a monster by everyone else. To exist as a symbol rather than a person. To be 300 years old and realize you've never actually had a friend, someone who sees you without either worshipping or fleeing. Her veins flickered through complex patterns. Until yesterday. Until you. Marcus reached out hesitantly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her hand. Her skin was cool, the texture slightly different from human, smoother, with those glowing veins visible just beneath the surface. You have a friend now. If you want one. Someone who sees Valeria, not just the queen. Someone who thinks you're beautiful and brilliant and carrying too much alone. Valeria stared at their joined hands, her veins cascading through colors. Purple, blue, gold, patterns Marcus couldn't fully interpret but which felt like emotion too complex for single words. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Friendship, connection, I've forgotten how if I ever knew. Then we figure it out together, Marcus said. Make it up as we go. I'm good at improvising, it's basically my entire career strategy. She laughed, that crystal sound, and her veins brightened to pure gold. You're ridiculous. I'm honest, Marcus corrected, which sometimes looks ridiculous because honesty is rare. It's very rare in my world, Valeria said softly. 300 years of diplomatic careful phrasing, political maneuvering, people saying what they think I want to hear or what serves their interests. And here you are, telling me I'm beautiful like it's simple fact. It is simple fact, Marcus insisted. Everything else is complicated, the politics, the biology, the cultural differences, all of that. But you being beautiful, that's just observable reality. The only reason it seems complicated is because everyone else has been lying to you for 3 centuries. Valeria's veins were so bright now they lit up the entire section of garden they were sitting in. I'm beginning to believe you, she said. When you say it with such certainty, I almost believe that maybe 300 years of being called monster might have been wrong. It was wrong, Marcus said firmly. Demonstrably, objectively wrong. You're not a monster, Valeria. You're a person who happens to have different biology. You're a queen who's protected her people and their secrets at enormous personal cost. You're someone who's survived 3 centuries of isolation and is still willing to try connection even though every experience tells you it will end in fear and rejection. He squeezed her hand gently. That's not monstrous, that's brave. Her expression did something complex, emotions flickering across her striking features. The nocturnal court is concerned, she said, changing the subject. They think I'm taking risks by letting you stay, by allowing this, she gestured between them, by hoping for something that might not be sustainable. They're worried about security breaches, about you learning about the living stars, about what happens when your human lifespan ends and I'm left even more isolated than before because I let myself hope. Those are legitimate concerns, Marcus acknowledged. I can't promise I won't accidentally cause problems. My track record suggests I probably will, and the lifespan thing is real. Humans live maybe a century if we're lucky. You're going to outlive me by a lot. But Valeria, he turned to face her fully, the alternative is you spending the next 1,000 years alone, never letting anyone close, never being seen. Is that really better than having decades of genuine connection, even if it ends eventually? She was silent for a long moment, her veins shifting through colors as she processed. No, she finally said. It's not better. It's safer, but it's not better. I've spent 3 centuries being safe and alone. Maybe it's time to try something different, even if it's dangerous, even if it hurts later. Then we try, Marcus said, together. And when it gets complicated, and it will get complicated, we figure it out together. You keep using that word, together. Her veins brightened to gold. I like it. I've forgotten what together feels like. They spent the rest of the day in the gardens, talking about everything. Marcus's research plans, Valeria's concerns about opening Nightborn society, the biology of the living stars, human culture and Nightborn history. And when they finally parted, both knew something fundamental had shifted. They'd chosen connection over safety, hope over resignation, together over alone. Whatever complications followed, and there would be complications, they'd face them the same way. Together, in her chambers that night, Valeria looked at her reflection and saw what Marcus saw, not a monster but a person. Complex, contradictory, carrying centuries of burden but beautiful. Not despite her differences but because of everything she was. And for the first time in 300 years, she let herself believe it. Let herself hope that maybe she didn't have to be the vampire queen, the nightmare, the monster anymore. Maybe she could just be Valeria. Beautiful, brilliant, no longer alone. And in his quarters, Marcus made notes for his research and realized he'd stumbled into something far more significant than a xenobiological study. He'd found someone who deserved to be seen, and somehow she'd let him see her. Whatever came next, political complications, cultural barriers, the inevitable challenges of connection across species, it was worth it. She was worth it. Sometimes the most important discovery wasn't about biology or science. Sometimes it was simply recognizing another person's humanity, even when they weren't human at all. The nocturnal court would argue. Security protocols would be debated. There would be challenges and conflicts and moments when the easy path would be to retreat to safe isolation. But standing in the gardens with Valeria's hand in his, Marcus had made a choice. And Valeria, looking at her reflection and seeing beauty instead of nightmare for the first time in 3 centuries, had made the same choice.